Welcome back to episode two of Rostrum. My name's Arjun, and today I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Spencer. And the topic of today will be disinformation.
I'm glad everyone is or if it's the first time you're coming back, thanks for listening in. And I'm excited. I want Arjun, you kick off disinformation. It's just what is it? Like what is disinformation?
Disinformation is something very closely related to misinformation, and people kind of have an idea generally of what misinformation is, right? It's fake news in a colloquial sense, from what I understand. Uh, But disinformation is the intentional spreading, I think, of misinformation. It's when you take ideas that you realize are misconstrued, misguided, or flat out wrong, and you peddle them as a truth. Uh, that is what it is, right?
Yeah, disinformation's deliberate, misinformation's a mistake. That's how I've always remembered it.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm guilty of misinformation from time to time for sure, but disinformation I hate with a passion.
Yeah. In fact, I think disinformation has been growing stronger and stronger by the day all over the world, especially in the realm of politics, social media, and culture wars, things like that. It's kind of become a contemporary topic and a severe issue, especially when it comes to polarizing topics and debates.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wanted to cover why people use it to kind of start off, but it's so prevalent simply because it's so useful. I mean, you can't get around the fact that if you make up the facts of an argument, you're more likely to win the argument. You know, it's easier to cheat if no one else is cheating.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So then I guess the first thing we got to talk about is what disinformation does to us, and misinformation to that extent. How do they exactly work? Why do we find them appealing as opposed to quote unquote real news or accurate reporting? Why are we so attracted to disinformation excuse me, misinformation? Do you have any idea?
Well, I'll give you a silly example, disinformation. Um, so April Fools, obviously, we know about it all today, but in 1957, the British Broadcasting Corporation put out a little documentary saying that the Swedes, harvested spaghetti from trees, and it was grown like a vegetable on a tree. And it was about a 3 minute documentary. And people believed it. People believed every bit of it. And then they were calling to ask about how they could plant spaghetti trees. And the thing is that BBC said, well, if you take an uncooked spaghetti noodle and put it in your garden, then it will grow into a wonderful spaghetti tree. And people did it. People really did it. Uh, you know, and obviously looking back, it's not like they were stupid. It's just that the BBC is a trusted news corporation, and they said, "Go plant your spaghettis," and so they did. You know, so disinformation it is not always bad, but it is, in my opinion, always inherently harmful.
I agree with you. So whether or not it's ultimately bad, I think is kind of irrelevant, right? Because when we talk about disinformation and misinformation, I think we need to keep in mind that the process is just as important as the product. Kind of like the ends don't justify the means, right? Just because, I don't know, your goal with the information you're spreading is a positive one, and you, let's say, want to uplift others or provide a certain feeling, maybe make people happy, does not necessarily mean that the way that you did it was right or is tolerable, right? But I think that most often disinformation, misinformation are malicious, right? I don't think that they're very good for society in the vast majority of cases.
No, and I think harmful is also like harmful to who, you know, because obviously it usually benefits somebody. I don't know how you feel about that, but
That's true. That is true. Who benefits from disinformation? Well, the people
usually the
spreading it.
person, the people spreading it, the source. Why would you lie if it didn't benefit you? I shouldn't say it like that. White lies are oftentimes good to maintain societal order. Like saying, "Oh, your hair doesn't look bad," well, trying to be nice. Um, yeah, disinformation. There's different contexts, I think, in which you also have to look at it because disinformation in finance is a criminal charge, but disinformation in warfare is like Sun Tzu sitting in the back of the auditorium, like slow clapping for you, you know?
No, it's oddly alluring, disinformation, even though I think if you ask most people whether they think disinformation exists and is rampant, they would say yes. But I think that if you really analyze whether people critically think about the information that they're getting, most people would not fall under the yes category there. So people are aware of it, right? I think they're aware of fake news. That term has kind of lost a lot of meaning, but fake news, quote unquote, and disinformation and propaganda. But people don't actually practice anything to try and rectify that spread of misinformation, disinformation. They don't really critically think about the information they're getting, by and large, at least from my experience. Yeah, to pull another example, I mean, just look at the pandemic. The amount of misinformation, disinformation that was spreading around, like eating, was it drinking bleach at one point? I think
Oh,
was something
yeah.
that was advertised.
Yeah. Yeah, inject, what was it? Like Purell or something into the body. Like my comment from earlier, I'm a Democrat through and through. I don't want people to get hurt. I just want to clarify that. I am a Democrat though. For you Americans out there that care. But yeah, I people see this stuff on their phones and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's from the internet. It's got to be true," because CNN and MSNBC are on the internet. So someone's crazy Uncle Sean's also internet, so they're both right. And people don't think about that. They don't care.
Yeah, yeah. There's just too much of an incentive for both parties. This is a both party situation. I'm not a centrist, but this is a both party situation where both parties benefit very heavily from partisanship, from the spread of disinformation, from putting one set of people against the other set of people, because that's what gets them riled up. That's the name of the game nowadays is reactionary politics. It's not putting forth policies that can improve the lives of people, really. It's about dunking on the other side. And that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for our culture. It's
No,
not sustainable for our politics. It's not sustainable for our society.
no. I mean, the mudslinging here in the States has gotten to a point where I can't have a reasonable conversation with somebody about policy. It's instantly, oh, my side's good, their side's bad, and here's my laundry list of things that I scraped off of Twitter as to why I'm right,
Mm,
and you don't have a frontal lobe. That's not a good society to live in. And that's propaganda, but also disinformation. You know,
yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I think it would be a good idea to try and understand a little bit from a cognitive, psychological, or maybe somewhat biological perspective how disinformation actually affects us. Why is it so appealing? There's this chapter out of a book that I found on Google Scholar called The Cognitive Science of Fake News. It's from the Routledge Handbook of Political Epistemology. It's written by Levy and Ross, published in 2021. And in this chapter, they discuss partisanship and disinformation, right? Why is it that certain groups hold the opinions that they do? And they discovered that people, in certain instances, people who had no opinion on an issue prior to hearing the party line stance on it, switched. They just completely
mm,
adopted the party line stance once they heard it. Right? This is something you see in both parties. It's just party line politics. Whatever the party says is what I agree with. There is no critical thinking there. And obviously, as we've discussed, the party does not have their best interests at heart all the time, most of the
no,
time, I would say.
you can't hear over the audio, but I'm like vigorously shaking my head. No, um, I would say party politics. I don't want to get too political because international audience and stuff, but
Mm,
they represent their own interests and they represent the interests of those who care about them. And disinformation helps keep that going to a certain extent. Um, you know, what is it? A lie will go 1,000 miles before the truth puts on its shoes, you know? So while information can be misleading, inaccurate, like I'm sure if you clipped what I'm saying here, you can make me say some really bad things, you know?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure
for
of it.
sure. Oh my goodness, the amount of
Yeah,
times you can
please
clip what
don't.
I've said.
Yeah, yeah, let's not. But, you can soundbite stuff. And that's scary because both sides do it. You know, left or right wing or Green Party or whatever you vote for. Uh, you know, it's scary.
Yeah, I think let's take a look at this from a cognitive perspective, right? So I'm a cog sci major, proudly. Uh, I think everyone who meets me at some point will hear that I'm a cog sci major because we just like to advertise ourselves like that. No, we're kind of
Yeah.
annoying, to be fair.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's like, I'm
one of the
smarter than you,
main,
and here's why.
but not as bad as film students. Actually, this is the second episode in a row where film students have got like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I take that back.
I
Don't
love
clip, don't
arts
clip that.
majors.
Do not
I
clip
love
that out of
arts.
context.
No, I love arts majors. They like have a soul. I'm over here slaving away in a lab, like boo-hoo, RNA, But anyway,
Or
cognitive
what was I
science.
saying? Oh yeah, I was talking about cognitive science. One
Uh-huh.
of the major frameworks of cognitive science that we learn is predictive processing, or active inference, as it's also called. It's the idea that our cognitive systems are systems that seek to minimize uncertainty in our environment. So we generate models of the world, and our sensory motor system goes out, acts upon the world, receives information from the world, and then we judge that information that we obtain from the world against our model, and we see where the error is. If the error is very high, then that leads to negative valence, which just means you feel bad, basically. And if the error is low, then you feel great. And if there's high error, namely, this is an important word, if there's high error, if there's high uncertainty between your model and the information you're getting from the world, and you reduce it, that is something that feels really good. So the reduction of error between your internal model of the world and your sensory motor information about the world is what makes you feel happy and good and things like that. Anyway, I'm saying all this because disinformation is something that is very easy to fall into because it often appeals to people's pre-existing biases. Right? It appeals to their heuristics about the world. I don't want to get too political here, so I'll skip
No,
this.
no, no.
Thank you.
Dude, do
Hmm.
what you say as you will. Say as you will.
All right. Let's say the immigrants are eating cats and dogs. Okay.
Oh no.
Right. I think it's fair to say that's false. I think it's
Entirely false.
relatively uncontroversial, I hope, to say that the
No.
immigrants eating cats and dogs is false. Okay. Why is it that it was such an effective slogan, right? Why? Well, I mean, for a certain group of people, right? Not for everyone. For a certain group of people, it's
No.
very effective. Why?
Well,
It's because
it's yeah.
no, go ahead.
It,
I don't mean it.
the information heuristic. I mean, if let's say the right wing, 'cause that's who espoused it, has this map in their head that says immigrants are not like us and their ways are different than ours and we don't like them because of that. And you see this screaming banner of, oh my God, they're eating my like 2-year-old cat princess, to them it's a virtue signal. It's like, I like this candidate. He's calling it out, even though it's entirely false.
Yeah, that actually goes back to your point earlier about the the end product of the disinformation or the misinformation. It is often to make a certain group feel better about themselves. I think that's what we've reached here, right? It's from a cognitive perspective, the people who are hearing this information find it to be great because it confirms their internal model about the world, right? It's saying, hey, your heuristics, your biases are accurate to the world. And that's why they find it so much more readily available. That's why they find it and they think, oh yeah, this information must be right because it adheres to my model of the world. And they obviously they're not thinking this, but the way our cognitive systems are structured plausibly is that we seek out information that aligns with our worldview rather than one that disparages it.
Right. And I think again, I already mentioned it, like clip farming, right? Like you'll see these snippets come up of political candidates saying these things. Um, Obviously, this is it was off the record, but I got to sit down the other night and have a conversation with Andrew Yang. Like he ran for president here in 2020. And I had never met him in person, obviously, but I'd heard some things he was saying. And I'm like, some of these I really agree with, and some of them I really don't. And I talked to them for a few minutes, and I'm like, wow, he's entirely not portrayed correctly. Like in a positive sense of his ideas that make so much more sense than I thought they did. But I'm sure if I spoke to the average political candidate from either side of the line, they're probably much more reasonable than they get portrayed to be by one side or the other. Um, you know, I I think it's dangerous because I'll give you a current example. SNAP and EBT benefits are getting cut where I'm at, like here in Philly and across the states because the shutdown. And then there's these people online saying, "Hey, we're gonna go break into and loot these grocery stores because you know food."
Mm,
Um, so then obviously the political debate of back and forth of committing crimes is bad. We can agree on that, right?
yeah,
But starving is also bad, you know. So I think this disinformation of saying, well, all SNAP users and EBT users are lazy, that's a lie. Saying all Republicans hate disabled people, also a lie. What's
yeah.
going on? You know?
It's it's a weird phenomenon because it's almost like where so many of us are operating on entirely different sets of core beliefs.
Hmm.
What could be true and what could be false. And it's kind of like we have an idea of what could be true, and we only search for information that confirms that truth. We don't search for information that disparages that belief or tells us that we might be wrong, which leads to a bunch of echo chambers people only where people have such different belief systems and such different ideas of what actually is out there in the world that even if you present them with certain information, you just say, okay, that actually isn't true because I believe in this thing. So the train of logic here is entirely incorrect, right? You say because I believe in this thing, this cannot be true. Not okay. This is plausibly not true. Therefore, I believe in this thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's also uncomfortable to be presented with information that goes against your worldview. During the Biden presidency, I saw some stuff, and obviously the first Trump presidency that made me either like or dislike them. And I said, well, I didn't think that was true. And then I researched it and said, huh, that is true. That makes me feel uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we live in these little isolated cells of, yes, I'm right all the time about everything because I'm so cool and knowledgeable. Um, I love feeling like I'm stupid sometimes because that means I have so much yet to learn, right? You got to be
Yeah,
okay with that feeling to be a reasonable citizen.
yeah. I love being stupid, man. It's one of my favorite things to be.
Yeah.
One of the greatest attributes of myself. When I go into an interview, I should say that. I should say, you know what? Other candidates, they won't tell you this. They won't tell you this, but they're all stupid. And actually, I'm the stupidest one of them all. And that's why you should hire me.
I
That'll
don't
be
know
mine.
if I'd try that.
I might try that next time, actually.
No.
So far, nothing else has worked.
Oh God. No, I'm doing my med school interviews next week and I'm shaking in my boots. But I'm like, yes, like, am I a Democrat? Yeah, but like, I am the most left-leaning individual you've ever met, and I believe in everything all the time. Um, you know, whether that's
Yeah,
true or not all the time, I don't know. But my interviewer sure is going to think that.
you
Um,
know, it's I think this point about all of us living in separate bubbles has been amplified by two things. One, the decline of communal spaces, which we covered last time, and two, the social media bubbles that have popped up. We've already covered the death of communal spaces, but the social media online bubbles actually that's a serious topic, and maybe it's a little too large for this one episode. But I just want to introduce something here from cognitive science again. It's a paper that's been written by Ben White, Andy Clark, and Mark Miller in the Neuroscience of Consciousness Journal, published in 2024. And in this paper, they talk about social media and predictive processing, right? They obviously introduced predictive processing much better than I could here, and I encourage you all to read this paper if you have the know-how or if you just want to learn more about predictive processing in social media. And they say that social media actually warps our generative models, right? Our models of the world. Social media is tailored to reinforce our prior beliefs, and it fishes for likes, right? It fishes for things that interest us rather than present us information that contradicts our worldview. So on the one hand, we have our internal models, which can only improve if we find that there's error between our model and the world. But on the other hand, we have a system that is specifically designed to reduce that error artificially as much as possible, therefore keeping our generative models stagnant and
Hmm.
not allowing them to evolve naturally as a result of information that exists in the world.
Yeah, but who wins? Like, if we're kept to our models, if we're saying we're not learning anything new, we're all about tradition all the time and nothing should change. Like, who wins?
But I guess the billionaires.
I
That's like
guess
no.
maybe.
It's like no feudalists who want to keep us all
Sure.
nice and happy and well fed, metaphorically.
Maybe. After these SNAP benefits in Philly, I don't know. But I'm kidding. I no, I think there's always a purpose behind an action, especially taken at a large scale. And to say there's not would be ill-advised. Um, it's my personal belief that, I'm not a Marxist, but I certainly think that, why do you want everyone quibbling all the time over the NBA games and the fact that, oh no, there's people that don't look like me around me? Who cares? We're all citizens, or at least trying to be, or here to work and have a good time. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's unfortunate because, the societal effects of disinformation is nothing but seated and continuous division. And it saddens me being someone who's really into civics.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. Okay, there is there are certain instances where there will be such a fundamental disconnect between you and other people as a result of disinformation that, or maybe otherwise, that you just will not be able to have a productive conversation with them. It's
Yeah.
true. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But I think that we should make a more consistent effort to actually reach out to people, talk to them, understand their viewpoints, and things like that. Actually, I saw a video on YouTube. Uh, it was from a YouTube channel called More Perfect Union, and the
Mm.
subject of the video was Bernie Sanders going into deep Trump country and seeing if he could convince people there. And by and large, obviously, it's edited for political purposes. So practice what we're preaching here. Don't take everything at face value.
No, right?
But I think that there are instances where just having an honest conversation with someone and being open to being wrong yourself can actually lead to more productive outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the online discourse and the disinformation about, Democrats or Republicans or what are your parties called up there? What do you got?
We've got the liberals, the conservatives, we've got the NDP as well, the New Democratic Party, and then a smattering of other parties.
Okay. You guys are more diverse in terms of systems of government, which I'm kind of jealous about. But yeah, no, it's there's this thing of, oh, all for us, like all Republicans are a certain way, or all Democrats are a certain way. Most people, if you sit down and have a coffee or a beer with them or whatever they drink or eat, um, they're actually quite reasonable about most things. I know that I would come to blows over vaccinations, for example, being in the world that I am. But everyone's got those little issues where it's like, yeah, you don't touch that, but everything else is cool. I think it's unfortunate, but it's the truth.
The yeah, it's the nature of our political, social, and cultural discourse has become so polarized that disinformation has become such an effective tool to divide us, and misinformation as well. I think we need to reevaluate our understanding of the truth, or at the very least, finding the truth. Uh, I don't think we'll ever be able to fully grasp what's true, quote unquote, because none of us are God. Whether you believe in a divine being or not, I'm just using this as like a metaphor. Like we'll never have a full understanding of reality, just because we
For
are
sure.
always looking at things from our perspective as human beings.
Uh, I'll say metaphorical sky person. Sure.
Metaphor, not
Sky
yet.
sky idiom. I don't know.
The metaphorical sky person, yes, we will never be that metaphorical sky person. And that means that the only way for us to be rigorous about what is or is not quote unquote true is to talk about things with other people. When we have a debate or discussion with someone, it should not be the case that most of the time, there's a big asterisk here, most of the time, it should not be the case that it's me against you and we're arguing to see who is right and who is wrong. And that's the point. No, the point of having a discussion with someone should be we're standing side by side and we're trying to decide which ideas are plausible and which are not. We're trying to combine the ideas that we have into a more integrated and holistic approach and set of ideas that can actually explain what we're talking about. And we're both looking forward side by side toward the truth, quote unquote. So we're working together to reach a new set of ideas rather than working against each other. And what we say in most instances should not be a reflection of our character, and it should not be like, oh, you were wrong here, so you're a bad person.
I believe I quote, in order to establish a more perfect union, you know, um, it's working together with people's gotten more difficult. And I think that's the hard part about this whole situation is I love being reasonable. I love being reasonable. I'm sure you love being reasonable. Usually.
Uh, I hope so.
I would hope so, right? I I think if it's a good way to be. But we find ourselves, at least here in the States, I mean, you guys are behaving yourselves up there, but we're certainly not. We're in unreasonable times. And I think the question on a lot of people's minds is after seeing all this political mudslinging, after seeing all that's happening, do you fight fire with fire or do you keep fighting the good fight? What do you think? I'm curious.
Like I said earlier, the process matters just as much as the product. The way you do things is important. So, while in some very few instances, and these have to be considered very carefully, it you do fight fire with fire. In the vast majority of instances, if you actually want to change the feelings and the ideas that people have, and if you want to find quote unquote the truth, or the way I'll say it, plausible ideas, then you have to be open to being wrong. And you have to bring that attitude with you, a more open, a more aware attitude about your imperfections to any discussion that you have with other people. And you should critically think about the information that you're getting as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best answer there could be of, yeah, Gavin Newsom from California. Boy, howdy, he's eloquent on Twitter. He's got some really funny things to say sometimes, but that's not how you run a stable government long term. And everyone's aware of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to extend your hand and say, listen, we all live here in this same globe. We all got to share all this water. So let's figure out how to work together. You know, the prevailing attitude in the States, and again, I'm not sure how it's going in Canada, but it's, oh, you know, I don't like the direction you're rowing this boat in, so I'm going to take your oar, snap it, throw it in the water. Like, no, now we're stuck.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on, man? Um,
Good metaphor.
you know, I'm with disinformation. I think also there is strategy to it, and I don't want to make it seem like it's all political.
Yeah. It has its uses, obviously, but there's always an incentive behind this information. I think I think we're coming up to the end here, so I
Yeah,
do want to wrap this up with the overarching idea that we need to be critical about the information that we have and the ideas that we hold. We have to be open to being wrong. We have to have a more aware and self-aware and open-minded perspective on topics, even on which we hold strong feelings. And we need more spaces where people can talk with others in a more sophisticated, rigorous, and in some cases kinder manner to actually understand what's going on. I think that's the point of the community we're trying to build here in the first place. We want to build a space for rational reflection.
Yeah. Be a good human, listen to other people, fight disinformation because boy howdy, it's winning.
Yeah.
Um, it really is. It's kicking our butts, especially with Sora. Oh my goodness.
So
You know,
AI, we need, that's a whole other topic.
that's a whole other Goliath. Anyway, thanks for listening. I appreciate you listening to my wild ideas.
Yeah, and mine too.
All right.
We'll see you next one then. And thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you all.